Hi, I'm Brian Johnstone. I'm a professor at Oregon Health and Science University in the Department of Orthopaedics and Rehabilitation. I work on musculoskeletal tissues and have done all my adult life. These days, I work on the progenitor cells that we have found. I didn't find, but other people first found in articular cartilage. It used to be the dogma. There were no cells in cartilage that have progenitor-like status, but that's been shown not to be true. And they're extremely useful because they're clonable, unlike cells like MSCs, which, despite whatever people will tell you, I don't find clonable at all, and rather useless for chondrogenesis on some levels. And so we now have a cell type that we can clone and we can use a lot longer in terms of passage times and more consistently for trying to do tissue engineering and or studying basic chondrocyte biology. So as an undergraduate, I did what's called a sandwich course in Britain, which meant that you take time off during your undergraduate degree to go to work. And I was at Brunel University, and Brunel finds all the undergraduates there placements, which is lovely. And the second year I did a placement. You do about 6 months a year. I was sent to the Kennedy Institute of Rheumatology, which was then in Hammersmith in London. It's now at Oxford University, but was then in Hammersmith. And got to work with some amazing people. John Sunday was my first boss working on extracellular matrix. The institute was just full of really talented scientists. So it was a great place to work. And then I went back again for the third year, third time of my undergraduate research experience. And then I wanted to do a PhD in the field. And so then I looked around, and there was a guy called Mike Bayliss who was offering a PhD in intervertebral disc proteoglycans at the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital in Stanmore. But when I got there to interview, he quietly told me that he was moving to the Kennedy Institute. So I then went back to where I'd been a summer student and did my PhD with all the same talented group of people, which was really lovely. And then I wanted to do a postdoc. And, I'd been at one of the greatest places, which was full of lots of international visitors. And my boss was great at telling people that I was looking, and I ended up with 6 interviews in America. And I took a big trip to the States and gave, the same talk 6 times in 7 days, which was entirely confusing. And then chose to come and work with Bruce Caderson, who was then in North Carolina. Actually, he was then in West Virginia. And like my first time, I spent my first few months of my postdoc, like my first few months of my PhD, moving the lab, which I would not recommend, but I did it twice. So I was postdoced in UNC Chapel Hill, and I thought I would be going back home after that, but British science was in such a bad way at the time in terms of funding that everyone just told me not to come back. They may have just not wanted me back, but they said, no, stay there, the funding's better. And then Bill Clinton doubled the NIH budget, during those years. And, we were all able to work and get grants. Good grants got funded, and that was great times. So then I opened my own lab in Case Western Reserve University, and then moved from there after 10 years to here, where I am in Portland, Oregon. Definitely trying to maintain work-life balance. We were very poor when I was a postdoc in North Carolina. We started having a family. That meant my spouse didn't work. I went on to an H visa, which meant it was really hard for her to work because of the visa rules at the time. And so then that was really tough. We had 2 small children. And then we moved to Case Western to Cleveland, and now as an assistant professor, salary was better. I could stop back working in, but now you're struggling with how to do daycare and all of those sorts of things, and how to be a good parent. And my father had died when I was very young, and I'd always said I'll be around for not that I'm blaming my dad for dying, obviously, but be around for my kids, and I wanted to be there, and that just proved to be really interesting. So you just have to, deal with the fact you're going to have to work late at night. After the kids have gone to bed, you're going to have to carry on working, find a quiet spot in the house or go back to the lab. And, you need a supportive spouse, obviously. And that's one of the toughest things, I think, is maintaining that. And being a foreigner in a foreign place with no family was really hard when it comes to those long summers when you have small children. And so they went to a lot of summer camps, and that was challenging. We felt guilty, but now they think they were the best lifetime years of their lives. So I feel good now. Yeah. So I think the work-life balance is one that young people ask me a lot about, and I can honestly say I didn't have a great formula other than you do have to spend more hours than you would in traditional jobs. That's one of these things. This is a bit more of a vocation than many careers. That's not for everyone. I give lots different pieces of advice, but one of the ones I absolutely do emphasize is that you should read the literature and continue to read the literature. People write really good papers. They spend a long time, thinking about what they're going to write in their discussions, etc. And they're really worth reading. Most of us don't have much time. We just skim through the abstracts, we look at the title, we go, what's this about, kind of thing, pass on by. But from the beginning, I built time into my week to sit and read and take, even if it's just an hour, 2 hours preferably, to actually read and make notes on papers. Obviously, it used to be physical papers. These days, you read it online. But just make those notes, get the takeaway messages. You can start to, really helps you for later in life when you're reviewing papers, when you're reviewing grants, if you get into it early and keep reading. I think it's one of the things, keys to success is to read what other people are writing. You get tons of ideas, you see techniques you've never seen before, etc. And I think that is something people forget to do or don't feel they have the time to do. And I would say you must always have the time to do it. Make time. Don't make it a period where you don't get disturbed. Do not disturb time. The ORS has been a lot of things to me. I just finished my 37th consecutive ORS meeting. That's getting up there. There used to be a time when people would have at the business meeting, they would ask who's been here 5 times, who's been here 10 times, etc., etc. And I would marvel at all these people who'd been there over 30 times. It's like, wow, will you ever get there? Excuse me, here I am at 37. So yeah, you can spend 37 years going to the ORS. And what it did was introduce me to people from all over the world because it is truly an international meeting. I now have wonderful friends, close friends all over the world as a result of meeting people at the ORS, talking science. A lot of science gets done in the social parts of the meeting. So don't avoid those. That's another piece of advice to youngsters. Go to the things. Don't be afraid to go up to people and ask them and talk to them. You'll be amazed how nice older professors are. They may come across as intimidating sometimes, but they're always willing to talk science. If you've got some question, you want to know something about something, you want to visit them, those sorts of things are just something you have to do. So the ORS is a great venue for doing that. And then, as I said during my award acceptance speech, my postdoc boss, Bruce Caderson, came up to me one day. I think I had my lab a year or so. And he sort of said, what are you doing? You need to be part of the society. It's part of, you need to give back, doing more service. Because that's the only way we survive. We do this for each other. And so I was like, oh, that's a good point. I had already started reviewing grants, but not a lot else. So then I got involved with the ORS, reviewing abstracts, and then you get asked to be topic chair, and then you ask, can I do more? And all of a sudden they ask you to be poster chair, and then you're in the presidential line, which I spent a long time in for various reasons. I happened to do the longest stint in the presidential line when it used to be 7 years. I did 8, but now it's thankfully 4. Yeah. So, and that was amazing. And, getting to be president of the ORS was incredible because you really do get to travel the world and meet a lot of people then. An amazing experience. And it is a tremendous challenge to try and herd cats. As I said in my speech, biologists do not think like engineers, do not think like clinicians. And the 3 of them are all represented on the board. And it is fascinating, absolutely, really joyous. So I learned a lot about management as well, I guess, from the ORS. First flippant answer is always, yes, I would marry for money if I had to do it again. But but that aside, I would say that I, I think one can stay too long in positions. One gets really into a particular piece of science. One can't believe that you're going to leave this behind to move on. But of course, if you're good, your bosses will always want you to stay. They will try and find money for you to stay, etc. But it's not necessarily the greatest thing for you. Not that I regret staying particularly, but I know I could have probably done one less year in my postdoc. Even shortened my PhD. I was done and did some extra time before I left to come to the States. So I think, you need to see what the opportunities are, not get too impatient and go too soon. You do need to finish the pieces of work you're doing as to the best of your ability. But you can get really, enticed to stay somewhere. But I think, if you're able to move and you want to move and explore the world, then do it, and don't spend too long in those early positions. If you feel like you've got everything you can from the postdoc, then it's time to move on, because those are training, right? They're not necessarily the ultimate thing you're going to be doing in your career. And I've swapped several times, all within musculoskeletal research for me, but other people swap completely depending on what things really attract them and float their boat. But those PhD and postdoc years are about training, learning techniques, learning how to do things and what bag of tricks, putting together your bag of tricks. So I think I would say think about regularly, what's my plan? When am I moving on? And obviously you can fall out with your boss over this, and that's never good. So, do be cognizant of what other people's desires and wants are, but you do have to be about what's best for you at the end of the day. We were trying to work out how to make, mesenchymal cells turn into chondrocytes in my lab. When I first started my lab, I decided this was a challenge I would take up because people didn't know how to do it. And the first time we saw the histology of the first pellet cultures that worked, and you've got, now purple stained, if it was told blue, staining of what was a ball of cells. So from a ball of cells to a ball of cartilage in 14 days, that was just amazing. People just take it for granted nowadays, but back then, in the 90s, that was 1990s, that was, an amazing thing to see. So I do remember those. I do remember that day. I do remember the slides. I still have those slides. It was amazing. We had pulled it off. So we're like, whoa. And then we kept working on it. We did it in rabbit progenitor cells first, and then we did it with human, and that just was amazing, even better. Yeah. And then I think the second most memorable day was presenting that work, which was at an ORS meeting. It was a big room and it was packed because, it was a new thing, and the title was in vitro chondrogenesis of MSCs. And so I think, I can't remember exactly the title, but it was definitely in vitro chondrogenesis. So people were fascinated because that was not something we could do then, which was so cool. And it was actually quite funny because the slides they put in, and this was back in the day of actual slides, so projectors with slide carousels on, and they put the slides in and they were actually the previous talk. They'd taken them out and then put them back in somehow, and so the previous talk came back up. So I remember it was Linda Sandell who was presenting before me, and so I was like, I can give this talk if you want, people, and I made some joke about it. So I can't remember the joke, but it made me relax, which was really good. And then they put my slides in and we finally got going. So now I'm under a time crunch because it's like a 10-minute talk, and I'm like, oh, great, that's 4 minutes of my time gone, So yeah, that was great times. Those are the highs. So when I was doing my PhD, actually, even before I did my PhD, I was at the Kennedy Institute, and the person who ran the institute was Helen Muir, and Helen was one of the women that broke the glass ceiling for women scientists. She was born of a time when you chose science or were getting married, that kind of crap. She had gone through that and she chose science, and she was an amazing person, really good scientist. And she stopped me in the hall one day and she said, "Do you like this, Brian? Do you like this stuff?" And I'm like, I didn't even know she knew my name. This is the institute full of people, right? And I'm like, yes, I do. I'm enjoying this. This was the second summer I was there. And she said, "Well, you should think about doing a PhD. I hear you're really having a good time in the lab." And I'm like, oh, okay. But then she said, "This is what you have to consider before you do a PhD. If you can live for 5 to 10% highs in life, then you can do a PhD. If you need more than that, then don't be in this, because the rest of it is laborious hard work and it's endless troubleshooting. And I thought about it and I thought, I think I can do that. So I did, but it's so true, right? And so to that very long story point, that was my high, was getting in vitro chondriasis to work. It was great fun. It was amazing. When I'm not in the lab, I love soccer, football. And so I get up early mornings on Saturdays and Sundays and with a group of friends go off to, thankfully, local pubs that open that early to watch English Premier League soccer. I'm also a season ticket holder for the Portland Timbers here in the city. So I can walk there from my home. So I go watch them and suffer every week. And it's lovely to scream and chant and sing. And I apologize now to all the referees I've insulted over the years, but you'll survive. And we get to do it again next week, even if we lose. So it's always been a great release. I loved playing sports as a kid. So this is now I'm older and don't play so much. Then these are great things to release the tension of everyday science life. Yeah.